Mandalorian, Chapter 19, The Convert. Oh, this is a great episode. It's also one of the longer episodes of this season so far, and I gotta say, there are a lot of elements here going back to some stuff we've seen from the previous episode, but also getting deeper into the Bo-Katan and Din Djarin relationship, and also more stuff with the Children of the Watch. So there's a lot of complexities here, but specifically the stuff with Dr. Pershing, who we saw previously as the guy who was in charge of the cloning stuff under Moff Gideon. Uh, oof. Um, no spoilers right now because, as always, if you have watched any of my reviews before, I spoil the whole thing. So if you're someone who doesn't want things spoiled, walk away now, go watch the episode, come back when you're done, because we're going to be talking about all the things here through the episode as I get into my show notes. But if you've seen it, you're good to go. So you've had your warning. Three, two, one. So we start the episode here in the cave, picking up where we left off, and Bo-Katan is like staring at the waters and she's having thoughts. Like we don't know exactly what's going through her head, but as Din wakes up and says, "I am redeemed," she says, "I witnessed it. Can we go now?" So she's still kind of like, "Yeah, you're just kind of a religious nut job." But then she asks him, "Did you see anything?" To which he replies, "No." And she's like, hmm. She says the waters never used to be that deep, so the bombings must have triggered seismic activities and opened it up deeper because he went in thinking it was just going to be a bath, and then he fell down. And she doesn't tell him about the mythosaur. She just asks him, "Did you see anything alive while you were down there?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" So there's secrets within secrets here. And this totally plays into where the episode leaves us at the end of it because we're going to get to that, trust me, but I feel like Bo-Katan is still her ultimate objective is she wants to lead the Mandalorians. She wants to return to the former glory of being the ruler of the Mandalorians, and that is and has always been like her major objective. And when we met her earlier in this season, she was dejected because she had lost her army and lost her ships, lost the dark saber, and all these other things that caused her to become this nobody. And I think that she's ultimately that's her main goal, and she's feeling that pull here because she's like, why did he, he fell in the waters, but the mythosaur is real and all this other stuff. So more on that when we get to it later. Um, so as we get going here, we're coming back and talking about, I invite you in for a feast, she says, but I'm guessing that helmet isn't coming off again anytime soon. He's like, this is the way. So we're off in their ships. TIE interceptors coming after them in space. There's six of them, and as we get back to her planet, we do a quick helo jump. I love the part where Grogu's like preparing himself in his shell and like just hunkered down while Din Djarin jumps out of Bo-Katan's ship to get into his ship, and we have this huge fight sequence between these six TIE interceptors and the two vessels, Bo-Katan's ship and Din Djarin's ship. And the dogfighting in this season is just they're really pushing the dogfighting. It's so good. Like this is just it's so good. It's so good watching them destroy these TIE interceptors. But even after all that happens, as they're celebrating, they see explosions happening above the ridge. And here's TIE bombers, and they've just blown up Bo-Katan's castle, and now she's pissed, and she's invested in the fight. And there are a lot more TIE interceptors on the horizon, and she makes a comment about how, you know, no Imperial warlord is going to send this amount of troops after us, right? So something's definitely going on here. We don't know exactly what, but Jen convinces her we got to escape, and then says, I'm going to use these coordinates. We're going to go somewhere. And this is when we get the jump. And the bulk of this episode is about the cloning doctor, the scientist from before, Dr. Pershing, who was the crazy doctor who was doing the cloning thing with Grogu and everything under Moff Gideon. And this whole sequence plays out with him being on Coruscant. And um, he's part of this reintegration program called the Amnesty Program, which apparently takes ex-Imperial, ex-Empire soldiers and scientists and tries to reintegrate them back into society with the New Republic. And we start off with him giving a speech on the planet This story about how his mother, died of a simple heart condition that could have been fixed if cloning had been on his planet, and so that's kind of why he had joined the Empire, and it just so happens that his research was distorted under a crazy dude, Moff Gideon, but also he was a little, in the pursuit of his science, was also a little off his rocker. Um, but then as he gets back to the reintegration housing program, we're meeting up with all these other recruits, and he sees someone who was on Moff Gideon's ship. And the other recruits are like, Moff Gideon, oh my God, you were on his ship. What was he like? That's crazy. And there's a little banter between the group as they drink and talk about the things they missed from their lives before, even though they have terrified memories of the Empire. Things like travel biscuits and the lights of hyperspace. And then we have Dr. Pershing in his quarters, and someone rings the doorbell, leaving a box in his entry. And what's in the box, man? What's in the box? And it's just some yellow travel biscuits. So someone is working at manipulating him. And ultimately it turns out to be G68 who is, befriending him. And there's a lot to unpack with this episode. I'm still not entirely sure of what's going on here, but I'm going to attempt to talk, work my way through it as we get deeper into the episode. But essentially he's got a new job doing data entry, and at night he's walking and talking and taking in the sights, walking with G68, who's this girl from before, who he doesn't know the name of yet. He just knows that she served on Moff Gideon's ship. And he's talking about and admitting how sometimes he thinks about his research and how it was left unfinished, and how it was good research. It was just twisted by the hands of a mad overlord. And she's like, well, why don't you continue it here? And he's like, the new Republic, they're too nervous about the ethics of cloning. And she's like, well, if it's important enough, does it really matter? And I'm like, she's totally manipulating him. And I don't know why. And I still don't know why, even after the episode ended. I have questions about all these things. Um, she's telling him, about following orders blindly is how we got in trouble in the first place. The New Republic is trying, but they're struggling. There's a lot of weight of help. So she's pressuring him to continue his research, woo, even though he's not supposed to. So then he's checking in with his parole droid, and constant questions. Are you feeling stress? Are you feeling anxiety? And he's like rubbing his ears because he is. And then he wants to know, could I continue my research from before, even recreationally? And the droid's like, no, because it's prohibited by the Coruscant Accord. Um, more conversations with G68, and she's like, "What would you need?" And he's like, "A mobile lab station." He's like, "But that would require us going outside of our designated perimeter. I don't want to risk that. I don't want to get sent back to the reintegration center. I want to belong." And she's like, "Well, if it's worth it, if your R&D is so important." So I'm like, she's pushing him so hard. Um, and one of his next check-ins, he's asking the droid, Isn't our main objective to help the New Republic, and that supersedes everything else?" And the droid's like, "Yes." And he's like, "Okay." So the next night, he's convincing himself in the mirror it's the right thing to do. We're gonna sneak out, and as they're sneaking out, as he's leaving his room to go with G68 to go to these Imperial shipyards where they've got all these decommissioned Imperial fleets. That he sees the travel. The camera pans to the travel biscuits in that Imperial box, and the music starts to get creepy, and it's just like, oh man. Um, the visuals here, they put a lot of love into not just the dogfighting, but also showing Coruscant. Way more than we've ever seen Coruscant before. It's just really cool. Um, I also love the little throwback to like the tip of the mountain that they find in like the tourist square, which is like supposedly it's the only section of the planet that's visible, like the only part of the planet that's visible apart, because the whole city's the whole planet's a big city, but this tip of the mountain. Anyway, they're flying out over the city in the subway train. The visuals here, especially as they get to the Star Destroyers that are docked here being stripped and destroyed, and we finally get introduced to these two characters. She says, "I'm Elia Kane, communications officer." He's like, "I'm Pen Pershing, scientist." They get the supplies. Oh shit, there's someone else on the ship. They run. They're caught. He's arrested. It's all a plot. She was in on it, um, and she turned him in, and he gets captured by these New Republic officers. And now he's in this lab, and they're putting him into this machine that he knows is a mind flare, which is what the Imperials used to use to wipe memories. And the scientist here is like, "We're not the Empire, son. This is just going to help reintegrate you into things, and you're going to have happy memories, and we're going to soothe you and help you get reindoctrinated." And this goes to show you that the New Republic, even though they might have better, they might be theoretically better than the Empire. They still rely upon methods that are really creepy. Like putting someone into a device that's going to make their indoctrination easier. It's literally brainwashing. It's literally a machine that's going to ease them back in. And it's kind of like when you start having conversations about, these indoctrination camps where, um, they teach people a certain religion, or they strip people of a certain religion, or they teach them to be or not to be homosexual, and all this other stuff. It's like this sort of shit is dangerous, and they're talking about the New Republic is using this. So, um, but this whole sequence here, this is the part where I'm still torn about, this girl G68, the girl who turned him in. She says she wants to stay and watch. She's a friend, I want to, help him, and convinces the officer to leave her there, and he leaves the room. And the machine is set on like a very low setting, and he's smiling as he's under the device. And it's obviously not an unpleasant experience for him. But as everyone leaves, she cranks the machine all the way up to max, and he starts to like tremble on the, have seizures on the machine bed. And I'm like, is she? Why is she doing this? Is she resentful of something, or is she trying to completely wipe his memory because she's hates what she did? Is she working for the New Republic? Is she still working under the orders from Gideon? Like, who is she, and what's going on here, and what is her ultimate objective? And I just don't know that. But we do know that she's doing something to, mess with Dr. Pershing, and I don't know if we're going to see him again in this episode or in this season or not. But this whole subplot, they spent way too much time on it for it to just be a throwaway thing for the episode. So I really am not sure how this is going to turn into what's coming down later in the season. So, food for thought. Anyway, we're back to Bo-Katan and Mando at the end of this, and he's taking her back to the conclave. And she doesn't seem too happy about it at the beginning, but her home was just destroyed, so she's got no choice, no other place to go. And she's here with Din. He delivers the water. He's redeemed. And then we get this whole sequence of the armorer telling them that by creed, Bo-Katan has also been redeemed because she jumped into the waters to save Din Djarin. And she's like, "But I do not follow the way." Um, and the armor is like, it doesn't matter. You bathed in the waters. And she's like, have you removed your helmet since you bathed in the waters? And Bo-Katan's like, no. Ah, well then you're free to stay here and join our convert and live as your ancestors once did. You can leave whenever you want. You're free to go, but you are now one of us. And this is where I'm coming back to. Remember in the last episode I was talking about this towards the end. I was like, maybe I feel like when she saw the mythosaur and then the dark saber and everything else, I think that Bo-Katan may be feeling something within her about some of the truth like behind the myths and legends. But then as the episode is ending and she sees the symbol of the mythosaur on the wall and the episode fades to black, I'm like, the problem here is that she really wants to be the savior of her people. And I'm wondering if this is going to pull her back into something darker, because that's her has been her ultimate goal forever, is to be the leader of the Mandalorians again. She wants to return to her position as, the rightful ruler, my bloodline. My family was the ruler of Mandalore, and I want that back. She was all dejected because she lost her army, lost the dark saber, lost her fleet, and all this other stuff. But I'm wondering if this is going to be her way back in, and it may even be that she legitimately begins to believe in the ways again and becomes like this religious extremist leader. Um, I don't know yet, but I feel like there's a lot going on here, and I'm very interested to see where they're going to take these characters. So, great episode. A lot going on here that I think is going to play into later episodes in this season. It was also one of the longer episodes of this season, so I was really happy to see that because I'm always happy to get more than 30 minutes of The Mandalorian. So, at the end of the day, loved it. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop it down in the comments below. Like, subscribe as always. Support if you can. Lots of different ways. Membership, super chat, super stickers, YouTube shorts, Patreon page. May the force be with you, everyone. Until next time, stay safe. This is the way.